Oh, friends, that was Finster, and this is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Charles Mackerras' opera in English. And today we're talking about, well, one of the biggies, Janáček, the Makropulos case. Oh my, this was taken from a live recording in 2006 with the English National Opera in May. A bunch of live performances before a very quiet audience. However, and this is the kicker, I originally reviewed this when it first came out at ClassicsToday.com, and several years have passed by. I've had time to digest my initial impression, and if anything, my initial feelings about it have only deepened. This is not nearly as good as Mackerras' Decca recording in Czech with Elizabeth Soderstrom and other Janáček mates. And it's really kind of a shame because Mackerras is, as always, very authoritative in Janáček, and he is here. You can't argue with the approach except to say that it seems to me, and I'm being very subjective here, that there is a certain disconnect between the language in which it's sung and the speed with which it goes. You know, Czech is a very compressed language. That is, you say a lot with short little syllables, very rapidly. And so it seems like the end of the first act when, Emilia Marty has shown up and she's talking about the lawsuit and all the characters are going back and forth and Gregor is in love with her and it is all kinds of quick patter going by. And it sounds fine in Czech because you're going, well, you know what I mean. It doesn't quite sound like that. But in English, where you have to draw out certain syllables and things, the tempos that Mackerras sets strike me as just too rushed to actually spit out the words in such a way that we can absorb them. And you may feel differently about it, but it struck me rather forcibly. And so there are moments where I just think he's pushing too hard. And that's really kind of bizarre because he knows how to pace the piece, and the timings in this particular performance are very similar to his timings in his previous recording. But somehow that one just seems to have room to get its message across. And this one seems like everybody's a little bit rushed. The second act, for example, has, that fabulous scene right in the middle where Emilia Marty runs into her previous love, who is now in his 90s, and she, of course, is still young and beautiful and is operating under a different name. Oh, by the way, did I tell you that this is an opera about a 330-year-old opera singer whose father was an alchemist who gave her a live forever potion, which is wearing off. And she's looking for the formula, which she gave to one of her lovers several hundred years previously. And a bunch of her descendants are now involved in a lawsuit. So she shows up to get the formula back. And, well, that's the story. It's fantastic. And in the end, she decides that life isn't worth living and she dies, or maybe she doesn't. We don't know. But she burns the formula. And that's the point. Anyway, there's that scene with her former lover, who's an old man and senile. They all think he's crazy because he thinks he's seeing Eugenia Montes, his earlier lover from Spain, when she is now Emilia Marty. So it's a very interesting scene, and they fling themselves at each other. And boy, do they do a lot of flinging in this performance. I mean, the singing traipses over the border to just shrieking at each other. It's just crazy. I mean, it's supposed to be crazy, but I mean, they're just yelling. I mean, it sounds like it's bizarre. And then in the final act, finally, it's such a clever opera because it's only about an hour and 40 minutes long in 3 acts, an hour and 45 minutes. And Janáček really withholds, any major lyrical outburst until the very end, the last 10 minutes, when everything just freezes and she gets to actually sing, really sing. And remember, she's an opera singer, so she should really be able to sing. And that's the other problem. Cheryl Barker, who is a good singer, very good singer, really a good singer. But Barker is not a misnomer in this case, because her voice, for all that she acts with it and works with the text, as she does, it's just not lovely. And that last scene where she has to become a hochdramatisch soprano, it doesn't quite happen. She's just a little bit too squally and steely sounding. And so it's not as convincing as it needs to be. The rest of the cast is very good. I mean, it's Neil Davies, John Graham Hill, Elena Xanthoudakis, Robert Brubaker, John Wagner, Thomas Walker, Graham Clark, Graham Danby, Kathleen Wilkinson, and Susanna Tudor Thomas. That's the whole crew. She's the chambermaid. That's the whole crew. And it's the English National Opera Chorus, the English National Opera Orchestra on Chandos. Really, if you love Janáček, then you're going to love this work. And there are so few recordings of this work. I mean, really good recordings, that you're going to have to get this, because you've got the Superphone recording under Gregor, which is really pretty mediocre all around. And then you've got the Decca with Mackerras, which is the standard. And then you've got this one in English, which is good, but it isn't great. And it's not Mackerras at his very best. Because I think he's limited to a certain extent by the cast. He's limited a little bit by the text. And it could have just been how he felt on the day. That's the risk of a live recording. That's what you're stuck with. So, qualified recommendation. That's the best I can do for this one. Unfortunately, would that it were otherwise. But keep on listening, friends, and thanks for joining me. Take care.